Hi guys, so I am Cheyenne and this is my YouTube channel, I guess. I have been wanting to start a YouTube channel and talk about books mainly for a while now, and I figured now's a good time to start. So in this video, I'll just be talking about my 2019 books, what I read, what I liked the most, what I didn't really like all that much, just different stuff like that. And I'm actually gonna go through my Goodreads account. That's how I like to track all of my reading, and I think it's just a good way to kind of keep all of your books in one spot, I guess. I used to really be into making lists and like writing it all down, and I still like to do that. I try to bullet journal all of the books that I read and make it look cute and everything like that, but Goodreads is just a good way to track my reading for the year. So in 2019, I read a total of 55 books, and page total was 16,019 pages, so love that for myself. I know there's other people who read so much more than me, and I envy them for sure. I was reading an article on Goodreads actually the other day, and there was a girl who 2019 was her second year in a row where she read 365 books, and that's amazing, but I would be stressed out if I did that. So I'm proud of my 55 books. So yeah, my shortest book was actually She Persisted, just a kid's book, but I've been wanting to check it out and read it, and I think it's great and it's for people of all ages. So, and my longest book was called Sleepless in Manhattan by Sarah Morgan. I read that during my spring break actually. And then let's see, the most popular book that I read during 2019, meaning popular in the sense of a bunch of other people who track their reading on Goodreads also read this book. So that was Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. 662,009 people also read that book in 2019. And my least popular book was Anna Lee in Real Life by Janelle Milani. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be the worst part of this, isn't it? Is pronouncing names. But Janelle Milanis. Gonna go with that. But yeah, and then my average rating that I gave for books in 2019 was 4.0, which is not surprising. I mainly rate books based off of like how they made me feel. And the highest rated book that I read on Goodreads for 2019 was Rumple Buttercup, a story of bananas, belonging, and being yourself by Matthew Gray Gubler. I love him. He's the guy who plays Spencer Reid on Criminal Minds. He's amazing. That's actually another children's book that I read, and it was so good. Highly recommend. So this is gonna be my 2019 reading wrap up, and I'm not gonna go through and tell you all of my like ratings on every single book, but I will tell you the names of everything I read, and if you want to kind of know more about how I felt about the book, you can check out my Instagram at CKP Reads and look at the ratings I gave books on there, or you can check out my Goodreads. That's kind of my favorite place to track my reading, like I've said. So yeah, I'll just go through, tell you the names. I'll show you the books, the covers, if I have the book. But the first book of this year, of 2019 that I read was I'll Meet You There by Heather Demetrios. And I really loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I'll tell you that because, like I said, I loved it. But the people, the characters, where this took place, it just reminded me a lot of where I grew up. And I just really enjoyed it for that reason, and I really loved the relationship between the two main characters, Skylar and Josh. It's a love story, but like so much more happens, and it's just a lot of what Skylar was going through. I really enjoyed it. Well, I'll just leave it at that. I really liked it. The second book I read was Dear Jane by Kendall Ryan. Then Anna Lee in Real Life. I read that as an ebook, and It's so good, and like I mentioned before, that was the like least popular book that I read, like according to Goodreads and who else read it. And I think it's so underrated. I don't think people have been talking about it really. I haven't seen or heard anyone talk about it. I think in my review of it, if I remember correctly, I said that it's kind of a combination of Eliza and Her Monsters and To All the Boys I've Loved Before. And if that doesn't sell you in and of itself, I don't know what will. So then the next book I read was A Stranger in the House by Sherry Lapina, and that was my first mystery of the year. Then I read A Boy on the Porch. Is that what it's called? Yeah, A Boy on the Porch. I have my computer over here, so if I'm looking, that's why. But A Boy on the Porch by Sharon Creech. Not If I Save You First by Allie Carter. You by Carolyn Kepnes. I'm gonna butcher so many authors' names, and I should know them, but here I am. But You. I loved You so much, and I honestly, after I read it, I didn't even want to watch the Netflix series, and all my friends were talking about it. They're like, you have to, it's so good. But I was like, I know what happens because I read the book. But I actually just recently, like a couple weeks ago, finished watching the first and the second season with my brother, and it's so different, I think, from the book. The first season is just because of Paco and that whole storyline. And so, like, if you've read You and you've watched the series, what do you think? Please comment, tell me below, because I want to talk about it with someone who's read the book as well. I haven't read the second book, Hidden Bodies, I think is what it's called. I haven't read that yet, which I kind of wanted to read before I watched the second season just to compare to, but I'll get to that eventually, I think. But yeah, but I really liked You, and I feel like even if you've seen the series, it's still worth the read, for sure, in my opinion. Then I read Gilgamesh. That was for class. I just graduated in May from college, and that was for one of my English classes that I was taking. So I love Gilgamesh. I had to read it in high school. It's weird, but I enjoy the story. So the next book I read was One Day in December by Josie Silver, and I really liked this book. I had been super excited about it, and it definitely didn't disappoint. So yeah. And then the next book I read was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. And I've told so many people about this book because I really liked it. I know there are other people that thought it kind of like fell flat, didn't really like it. But I just know when I read it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually listened to the audiobook of it and then went out and bought a copy because I needed it in my life. And I always describe it to people. I'm like, think Breakfast Club, but one of them dies. And so I really liked it. And I don't think there's a lot of YA thriller mystery, at least not a lot that like gets put on people's radar, I feel like. So this book, I was really happy that I listened to it. I thought the audiobook was really well done, and I'm so excited for the sequel that came out, and I have that on hold at the library, and I can't wait to get it and read it this year. But yeah, so One of Us is Lying, very good. So then the next book I read was The Penelopead by Margaret Atwood, and I mean, everyone knows Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale, everyone loves her. And this was actually, I haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, which I am ashamed to admit, but I read this from one of my classes and it was really good. It's not even like a retelling, I guess, but sort of. It's a story in the perspective of Penelope, the wife of Odysseus, and it's kind of her telling the story from her point of view, while Odysseus was kind of off meandering and doing not so nice things. So I really liked it. I thought it was great, and I actually ended up writing one of my papers for that class on this book. It was really good. Then I read Sleepless in Manhattan by Sarah Morgan. This was the book that I read on spring break. It was the perfect spring break read. Romance, cute, a little steamy. I really liked it. And then actually right after it, I read the second book in the series. You could read them alone, but they just have reoccurring characters, which is spoiler, one of my favorite things in a book. I love when there's reoccurring characters. But then the second one I read was Sunset in Central Park, also by Sarah Morgan. The next book I read was The Bride Test by Helen Hoang, and oh my gosh, I just love this book. I loved the kiss quotient, and I just think the characters are amazing and they're different, and it's unlike stuff that I've read before, and I just love a good romance, and this one was funny and sweet, and I really liked it. And then I read 2 books by Ronnie Loren back to back. They are also in another series with reoccurring characters. And the first one is called The Ones Who Got Away, and that's kind of the title of the series. And then the second one is The One You Can't Forget. And I am a firm believer that Ronnie Loren is one of the most underappreciated and doesn't get enough hype as a steamy romance writer. She is so amazing. I love all of her books that I've read, and these ones were amazing because there's always there's romance, and it's not gonna lie, very steamy books. But there's always other aspects, and the relationships are, I would say, pretty dynamic and fleshed out. And I really like how there's kind of mystery usually, or some sort of suspense happening. And these two were both really good, and I really enjoyed the characters and their stories. So yeah. And then the next book I read was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. And Christina Lauren, for people who don't know, they're a writing duo, and they are my favorite authors ever. Anyone who knows me knows that I love them. I am so obsessed with them. I talk about them frequently. If any person is like, oh my gosh, I'm in a reading slump, I recommend a Christina Lauren book, because it always pulls me out of a reading slump, because they're so fun and they just make me feel so happy. So I always recommend them to people. But The Unhoneymooners was so cute. I loved it. I think it was something different that they hadn't done yet. I loved the concept of, this girl goes on a honeymoon with this guy that she doesn't really like, but she doesn't want the trip to go to waste. And it's so good. And I really liked it, and it made me laugh. I definitely cried during it too. So yeah, The Unhoneymooners I would recommend, obviously, because I love Christina Lauren. So the next book I read was 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, and she actually wrote, is it The Hating Game? Might be wrong on that, but I think it's The Hating Game, and I really liked that book. But I went back and I reread it recently, or just reread parts of it, I think, and I didn't love it as much as I thought I did, which surprised me. But anyway, 99% Mine, I read that in 2019, and I liked it. Didn't super love it, but that's one of the books I read. And then after that, I read The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. Oh, and this was another book that I told so many people about, because I thought it was super unique and unlike anything I'd ever read. And I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and it was so amazing. And just the whole, when you love a book so much you can't even talk about it, because you just have so many amazing things to say about it. That's how I feel about this book, because the relationships in it, between the daughter-in-law and her mother-in-law, it's so good. And the mystery in it is amazing. Sally Hepworth knocked it out of the park. I was crying at the end of it. I was so just it hit so hard, and I recommended it to so many people. And that's definitely one of my favorite books that I read this year, for sure. That book made me want to write a book, and I was like, I want to write a book that makes someone feel the way that made me feel, for sure. Yeah, so I love that one. And then I read Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. This book was so cute. I loved it. one of my favorite romancy books I read this year too. So cute. I loved it. And the cover is amazing. And I cannot wait for the second one. I think this is going to be an amazing series. And again, I love reoccurring characters. So this is perfect for me. Then, I read Meet Cute by Helena Hunting. And I did not like it at all. And this was a book that I actually read with one of my best friends who lives in Omaha. I live in Wisconsin. So she lives in Omaha, Nebraska. And this is kind of, this book club we started was a way for us just to like have an excuse to talk to each other and chit chat about books because we love to read. And this was the first book that we chose to read. And it was a mutual decision because the cover looks cute and the concept looked or like sounded really cool, you know, but wow, did it fall short for sure. I would not recommend spending your money on this book. That's all I gotta say. Then the next book I read was The Couple Next Door by Sherry Lapina, and I really enjoyed it. I actually liked it more than A Stranger in the House. Really recommend this mystery book if you're into that. So the next book I read was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. I think that's how you pronounce it, his last name. And that was my first memoir nonfiction book that I read for the year, and it was so good. I loved it. I cried a lot. But it's about this guy, Paul, obviously, who was a brain surgeon, and he got diagnosed with lung cancer, and he kind of just talks about his life and how he became a neurosurgeon. And it kind of just, it hit close to home for me for multiple reasons, and I really liked it. It was really good, and I would highly recommend that book. And then I read Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Oh, what a masterpiece. I loved this book so much, and I knew I was going to because I need to show, I ordered a signed copy, and it's so beautiful. But I loved this book so much, and I knew I was going to, but it was one of those books that I knew I was gonna like, but I had been putting off reading it for so long for some stupid reason. And when I finally did read it, this was another book that I actually read with my friend in Omaha. We read it together, and we both really liked it. But this, again, one of my favorite books I read this year. I loved the main character. I related, and I'm gonna say it. It's definitely my favorite John Green book, for sure. And like, I love him and I love his books, but this one was it for me. It was so good, and I would highly, highly recommend it. And even if you didn't like The Fault in Our Stars or Paper Towns, Looking for Alaska, like if those weren't your cup of tea, try this one out. I really don't think you'll be disappointed. The next book I read, I actually listened to it, was Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. And I really enjoyed this one. Wasn't my favorite like mystery thriller that I had read, I was just a little disappointed by it because the concept was really cool, but yeah, kind of fell short for me a little bit. Then I read Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, and this was my most popular book of the year that I read. Like I said before, a lot of other people on Goodreads read this book, and this book messed me up. It was so dark and twisted, and I did not see the ending coming at all, really. I guess I did a little bit, like I suspected it a tiny bit, but I didn't suspect how messed up it was. And I actually wanted to read it because I wanted to watch like the HBO special of it, but I haven't even gotten around to doing that. But it was really good, just kind of go in knowing that it's messed up and dark and very kind of graphic, in my opinion. So yeah. So the next two books that I read were both graphic novels, comics. I think these are comics. The Walking Dead Volume 1 and 2. The first one is called Days Gone By, and the second one is Miles Behind Us. I love Walking Dead, the TV show. Not gonna lie, kind of fell off watching it after one of my favorite characters was killed off, and it made me mad, and so I stopped watching it for a while. But I've always wanted to read the comics, and so I started that last year, kind of only got to the second one, but I plan on reading the other ones eventually. But those are both good if you're into The Walking Dead. Then I was just on a graphic novel comic kick, because then I read Archie. I think, is that the name of it? I don't know. Is it Archie? Yeah, Archie Volume 1. So this is the comic based off of, or not based off of, this is the comic that the show Riverdale is based off of, and anyone who knows me knows I love Riverdale. I know it's kind of weird and trashy and guilty pleasure, but oh, I love it so much. And I thought the comic was super cute, and I loved it. I thought the images were amazing. The art was awesome, so I highly recommend. Then I read Deep Dark Fears, which is a book by Fran Kraus, and it just is like pictures accompanied with people's like weird, or sometimes not so weird, phobias. And it was really a quick read, but it was cool and it was something different. So then I read Rumple Buttercup. Oh, and I loved this one so much. This is the one I talked about earlier, by Matthew Gray Gubler, sorry. But yeah, so Rumple Buttercup, a story of bananas, belonging, and being yourself. If you have a kid, read this to your kid. If you yourself, just read this book. It's so good. It's so cute. I loved it. I love Matthew Gray Gubler. I think he's a freaking national treasure. He's amazing. Then I read Things I Can't Forget by Miranda Keneally. And then I read The Hookup by Kristen Callahan. This is actually a book that I reread. I read it a while ago, I think, but it's one of the books that I like to reread because I have some favorite parts and stuff like that, and I just decided to reread the whole thing. And then I read The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, and I love that woman. I love her series, like The Wedding Date. I read that in 2018. I read this one. And then I read The Wedding Party, right? Yes, The Wedding Party. And I liked The Proposal, but I didn't love it as much as like The Wedding Date. And then I read The Wedding Party, and I loved it so much. It has been my favorite for sure. And I recommend it to so many people because it's amazing, and I thought it was cute, and I loved the characters. They were my favorite couple so far, and like her Wedding Date series with like reoccurring characters, I loved the characters so much in that one, so I would recommend that too. Oh, that's cold. Then my next few books that I read were, graphic novels. I don't even know, what is the term? Things I should know the distinction, but I don't. I just use graphic novel, comic interchangeably. But I read Adulthood is a Myth by Sarah Anderson, and I think on Goodreads I wrote a review that said I am just gonna give this to people who want to get to know me because I am this book, basically, is how I describe it. And it's so cute and it's so funny. The images, like it's just so funny, and it's so relatable on so many levels, and I dare people to flip through this, read it, and not smile or die from laughter. And then she also has two more, Herding Cats and Big Mushy Happy Lump. And again, these both were so funny, so amazing. And also the covers of these are cool. The girl on it, like her shirt is felt, and like the letters, it's raised. It's really cool. I would highly recommend. They're so funny. They're amazing. And then the next book I read was The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez, and wow, loved this one too. This was one of like the books I was super excited about to read and super excited to read in 2019, and I really liked it. I think the ending fell a little short for me, but I still thought it was really good, and I'm excited for the second one. Then I read another book by Ronnie Loren. It's the third one in that series that I was talking about earlier, and it's called The One You Fight For. Really good. Again, read Ronnie Loren. She's so good. Then I read The Right Swipe by Alicia Ray. Is that? Yeah. I apologize to literally all of these authors. Not that they're going to see this, but for saying their name wrong, because I know that sucks. And I'm going to try to get better about learning the names before I film a video, but here we are. So yeah, The Right Swipe. I was sad about this one because I was so excited for it. I had put it on hold at the library so I could get it right away, and it just wasn't what I was expecting, and I just didn't love it as much as I wanted to, sadly, but is what it is. Then I read All the Way by Kendall Ryan, and not too crazy about it, but it was a quick read and it was fine. And then I read the rest of the story by Sarah Dessen, and it just reminded me why I love Sarah Dessen so much. I read her all the time when I was in high school, and I needed to get out of this like reading slump, and so I got that ebook from the library, and it was so good, and I loved the story so much. I cried, I highlighted so many things, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So my next book for the year was Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. And I know that I said earlier that they're my favorite authors on the planet. I love them so much. And it pains me so much to say it. And I don't even want to put this out in the universe because I feel like I'm betraying them, because I love them so much, and I think they're two of the most amazing humans ever. And I just love them so much. But this one by them didn't do it for me at all. And I know other people feel the same way, at least on Goodreads from what I've read and stuff. And it just made me sad because I felt like I was betraying them, because I'm so loyal to them and I love them, and I tell so many people about them, and I am not even kidding, I love every single author book they've written. I love that. Like I do. I mean, I definitely have like ones I like slightly more than the others, but like overall across the board, I thoroughly enjoyed reading all of them. They're my most like reread books I think that I own. I love rereading them so much, but this one it felt very different from their other books. The characters did, because normally I end up reading a book by them, and by the end of it, I'm like, not even by the end of it, during it, while I'm reading it, I want the characters to be my best friends. I want them to be real life people. And like, I love their characters, and I think the way that they write their characters is so amazing, and I just love it so much. But I just didn't find a connection or anything really with the characters in this book, and yeah, it just made me sad. It made me so sad. But I have high hopes for their next book coming out, so yeah, and I still would recommend them. Read some of their other books, they're amazing. The next book I read was Let It Snow by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. And there's a weird story behind this book, and it has a library sticker on it, and it's from my high school library, so whoops. But anyway, besides that, so I read this because I wanted to watch the movie on Netflix, which I thought was very cute. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I thought it was lovely. I didn't really love the book all that much, if I'm being honest. I really didn't like the story by Lauren Miracle, and I feel so bad because one of my best friends loves her, and I had read a book by her like years and years ago, and I actually ended up returning it to the bookstore because that's how much I just didn't like it. And her story in this was definitely my least favorite. Then it was Maureen Johnson's, and then John Green's. I thought John Green's story was super cute, and I love John Green, so yep. But didn't totally love that one, but it's a cute like holiday read. Then I read The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, and this book got me out of a reading slump. It was so good. Loved it. I told my friends about it. It was amazing, cute romance. Again, loved the concept. This girl like needs a place to stay real quick. Her and this guy set up an agreement. He gets it during the day, she gets it at night and on the weekends. I mean, they leave post-it notes to each other. That's how they communicate. It's so cute. I loved every minute of it. Okay, and then this is where it's gonna get absolutely crazy, because the next like few books that I read were some of my favorite books I've read in my entire life. And it's so weird because it was all in the last like not even like 2 months of the year. And normally when it gets to like crunch time at the end of the year, when I'm trying to like meet my reading goal, I'll try to like cut a little bit of a corner and like try to read like shorter books or like read a comic or something like that, you know. But this year I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I want to read like some books that I've really been wanting to read. I'm gonna do it. And so this is just where it gets crazy, because these books literally mean so much to me. But so the first book that I'm talking about that kind of like wraps up my end of the year is Where the Crawdads Sang by Delia Owens. And I know I'm late to the party because this book was like popping last year, I think. Oh, but this book. Oh, I told everyone about it. Again, that's just what I do when I like a book. Who doesn't? But this one was so beautiful. The imagery throughout the whole novel, I think other people may find boring, but I found it stunning and amazing. And just, oh, Owens as a writer, like being able to do that, and the stuff that she wrote, I just don't understand how words can be strung together in such beautiful sentences. And I loved it so much. The main character in it, I admire her so much, and I can't wait for other people in my life to read this so I can finally talk to some people in person about it. But it was so good. I highly recommend it. So amazing. I can't talk highly enough about it, in my opinion. It was so good. And you're definitely gonna cry if you're a soft, sensitive person like myself, because it's a doozy. It's a doozy. And then the next book I read was Saint Anything by Sarah Dessen. Like I had said earlier, I read one of her books and it reminded me why I love her so much, and this one was the same. And I love the characters in her books. Like, they're so real, and the problems that they have are real, and the way that she writes about them I think is really cool and amazing. And this book was really good and I would highly recommend it. And then this is another one. Like, my top 3 books, I'll show you at the end like what my top 3 were, but this was one of them. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Like, there's usually like one book during the year that I read that by the end of the year I end up getting a ton of people that book for Christmas, because like, it's not even the main gift I give them, because they might not even be like a huge book person, but I'm just like, I need to give people this book and just spread it everywhere, because that's how much I love it. And that was this book for me this year. I actually didn't even end up giving it to a ton of people, but I told a lot of people about it. And if you have not read this, what are you doing with your life? You need to read it. And I thought for the longest time that it was nonfiction, and I would scroll past it on Goodreads, or, you know, hear people talking about it on BookTube, and I was like, yeah, whatever, you know, like in one ear out the other, not even really listening to what they're saying. And then I, like, for some reason it caught my eye on Goodreads finally, and I read the description. I was like, oh my gosh, wait, what? It's fiction. Okay, well, let me give it a shot. And I got it from the library. I read it as an ebook. I was in my room at 2 a.m. shook to the core. I couldn't form words. It was so amazing. The ending ripped my heart out. So I think on Goodreads, it tracks, you know, like if I read it as an ebook, it tracks my highlights and stuff like that. I had like 165 highlights and 17 notes or something like that, something crazy, because it's so good. And like, one of my favorite lines in the book, I mean, there's so many, I can't even say one, but I'm actually currently listening to the audiobook because it has a full cast and it's amazing. I would highly recommend the audiobook too. And yeah, this book, so amazing, so amazing. And then the second to last book I read was Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen M. McManus, the woman who wrote One of Us is Lying, and that one was so good. I did not expect the ending at all. I thought it was a little repetitive during the book. Just, it felt like there was just a lot of buildup, but the ending, I was so stunned, and I think I ended up calling my mom and just ruining the book for her because I needed to tell someone about it. So good. I would recommend that one too. Okay, here we go. This, I'm gonna say it, this is a bold statement, but The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, also by Taylor Jenkins Reid, is quite possibly my favorite book I've ever read in my entire life. I'm gonna get emotional probably talking about this book, but it was so amazing, and it's my favorite love story I've ever read, and I still don't know how to properly form words about this book. And kind of like Delia Owens in Where the Crawdad Sings, Taylor Jenkins Reid, I don't know how she does it. Like, I don't know how someone can string words together into such beautiful sentences and make it mean so much. And I think in my Goodreads review of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I wrote that Taylor Jenkins Reid has a way of writing about relationships and people that is completely, it's just insane to me. And I mean insane in the most amazing way, because it hits you in your core. And I finished The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo at 2 a.m. I think, and I was sobbing because the whole thing wrecked me. And I know eventually I'm gonna do a book review on both of these books because I need to. They are amazing. And I know I did it backwards kind of because she wrote this one first and then this one, but I read this one first because this was the one that I had been hearing about. And I love them both. Oh my gosh, do I love them both. But this one ripped my heart out, just stomped on it, and then lovingly placed it back inside me. And I'm so grateful. But wow, this book, it's amazing. It's so amazing. I highly recommend it. I'm on hold for all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's, that sounded weird. All of Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books, because I need to read every single thing she's written and published because I'm obsessed. So yeah, so that was my 2019 reading wrap up. This video is going to be insanely long and I apologize. Maybe I'll try to cut it down. I don't know. But yeah, so that was my reading wrap up. If you want to know more details about what I felt on each of the books, like I said, check out my Goodreads, check out my Instagram. I'll have that all linked below. And yeah, go ahead and subscribe if you liked how long I talked about these books. And let me know if any of these were your favorite books. What were your favorite books of 2019? What do I need to read in 2020? Let me know. I'm super excited to be starting this channel. And honestly, I know probably no one's gonna even watch this other than like my family and my close friends, but I don't even care because I love talking about books and I'm just happy that I can talk about them. So thank you for watching and I'll see you on my next video. Bye.